Has the response by the authorities in Ottawa changed or affirmed any of your views on defunding the police?
Thank you, Robin. Well, my mother, first of all, who isn't, necessarily in tune with all of my politics, I was speaking to her the other day, and she was like, oh, they should just defund the police. Like, if they can't, the police are useless. So many people have been saying the Ottawa police have been staging one of the most effective commercials for defunding the police that we've ever seen. But I think what we have to do, for those of us on the left, is I think we have to be really careful about how we engage with discourse around state violence and state force. Right? Because part of what we're always trying to build is a world that moves beyond the idea that our only solution is force and violence. So this has been the dilemma, right? Because on the one hand, of course, we recognize that this is a white supremacist convoy, that we're seeing swastika flags, we're seeing all kinds of violent slogans. We've seen members of the far right out. Of course, we've heard the stories of like the soup kitchens and shelters and places that are being intimidated and threatened. So we know that this isn't the worker uprising that people are trying to sell this to as, and we know it's extremely dangerous. And of course, we also have been through all the discussions around all the ways that the police have suddenly forgotten to do all the things that they do when Black and Indigenous people are peacefully protesting. So when youth in Vancouver were protesting, I think it was for climate change, within 48 hours, the city of Vancouver had an injunction that said you couldn't be on any stairs and sidewalks, and they wanted to be outside of the legislative building. We've seen injunctions passed for Indigenous people on their own territories protesting for water defense. We've seen all kinds of laws and cracking down. In August 18th, for example, in Halifax, the police came violently and cleared a shelter, which included pepper spraying an 11-year-old girl in the face on Spring Garden Road, which is downtown. And all of this was to get rid of 2 shelters that unhoused people were using. We've experienced that across the country as well. So in fact, in the last 2 years, we've seen a huge crackdown on protesting for Indigenous people, for Black people, for people defending the unhoused. We had the youth in Hamilton who were arrested simply for defending an encampment. And then all of a sudden, that violence, oh, well, we don't know what, not only is it not violent, but they're like, we don't know how to get people to stop honking their horns. We don't know how to get a truck to move. We don't know, what do we do? And this kind of performance of helplessness, we know never exists when Black and Indigenous people in particular, or workers or unionized workers, whoever it is, go out and protest. But I think where some on the left are going wrong is people like, why won't the police do their jobs? And I think they are actually doing their job. This is what the police do. The police exist to get Indigenous people off their lands, defending capital, defending the oil and gas money, and criminalizing Indigenous people as a result, because we know Indigenous sovereignty is the greatest threat to capitalism and to money. The police exist to oppress Black people and keep us in the unhuman and stop us from being part of public space. The police exist to arrest and criminalize drug use, to arrest and criminalize sex workers, to arrest and criminalize people with mental health, all of those who are seen as not conforming people who do not conform to this norm. That is what the thin blue line is. That's the literal image that they have, that there's chaos, and the only thing standing between chaos and white order is the police. So what are they doing right now? They are upholding the white order. There is no social threat to the Canadian order in this protest. If they were actually unifying workers, it would be done. When did Martin Luther King get shot, since we're in Black History Month? Martin Luther King got shot when he organized sanitation workers in Memphis and he connected the racial struggle to the class struggle. When did Fred Hampton get shot? When Fred Hampton, as a 21-year-old young man, organized people of all different racial and class backgrounds and was creating a coalition, and the FBI moved in. So we know that this convoy is not a worker uprising or about unity or freedom, because if it was about the true expression of those things, it would have been stopped. That it actually is no threat to the Canadian social order, that many of the police, as we know, are in favor of this and support it, that it upholds white male rage about the changing social order and the idea that they no longer have the same kind of powers. In fact, they do, but they believe they're being eroded because some Black person got hired once somewhere, or there happens to be an Indigenous MP, or some woman, got a job, so oh no. So I think we also have to be honest with ourselves about what the police do. And this is what the final thing I'll say is, this is what leads us to the defunding conversation, is when we talk about defunding, it's really the first time in a long time on the left. Usually we've left like finances to the right, the idea that the right is like fiscally responsible and the left spends money. And we always have that myth that we kind of allow. And often we've focused on the social. Not defunding the police has really put like the economic order front and center, and the idea that we pay for what we value, and that the budgets that we have reflect power in society. And of course, we've been shifting money to policing and punishment for decades to uphold the very social order that we are observing in occupied Ottawa right now. So if we ask ourselves, why can't the police do something? Because they are not designed to do this, because they have no will to do it, and because this actually is their job to allow this to happen. And I think the sooner in many ways that we recognize that, the more productively we can start to have a conversation about why we continue to believe that policing and punishment is any kind of social solution that's ever upheld any of us. And of course, we saw in Vancouver, they didn't need the police. People on bicycles stopped them because community came out and was able to do what the police have not been able to do anywhere, which is stop this. So we got a demonstration that people who are unified, that are building coalitions, are still the most powerful force. And I know that other people living in Ottawa have a bit of a different view, because you're like living with these people. And when there's no solution, it's like, what do we do but try and get laws passed? But I think what it has done is sort of set a crossroads for the left around how we build coalitions, how we organize, and how do we move away from relying upon narratives of state violence when we see exactly what the combination of white supremacy and state violence actually looks like. It looks like downtown Ottawa.